It is No Gifts Please, the parenting podcast by the pair with no real gifts, but a whole lot of gumption. Hey everyone, I'm Steve Noviello.
And hello, I'm Jenny Anchondo.
It is good to see you.
It's been too long, and I'm glad that we do this podcast just so we can hang, because otherwise I'm like, would I see you anymore?
I feel like that music was really loud.
It was like, hey, we're back. We're back in
Wake
business.
up. You know what? It's funny. Well, I will see you, for our annual Halloween outing,
Yes.
Depending on which order these run in. I may have seen you already by the time people hear about this. But it's that now that school is back in the full swing and work is kind of crazy, I don't get to see you as often as I would like. So this is, of course, a nice excuse.
So as we were getting ready for this episode, we were both, and I can see, like, you see what you look like while you're scrolling when you do a show like we do, because we're both sort of in front of the camera all day long, and then also doing this whenever we shoot these at night or weekends or whatever. And it's like I look in the screen and I see both of us just chins down, eyes down, scroll, getting our little dopamine hits before we go.
I know that we're parent focused and kid focused, but I feel like everything we discussed today with our guest will be applicable to us.
Oh,
as well.
I am the first to say that I have a major problem, but it also means that I'll always reply to you because I am often on my phone. Anyway, I'm excited to introduce everybody to Aniko Hill. So I actually found her on Instagram because she's the co-founder and executive director of a company called DopaMind. It's a nonprofit that focuses on kids' digital wellness and really empowers kids and their caregivers to develop healthy relationships with technology. And I did consider, like, am I ready to receive the information that she has? She does this through content, education, events. She has extensive social media experience and also has worked at an award-winning creative agency. So she understands working on social media and working in social media. So if you have that as an excuse, no more, because she is going to bring it to us. Okay, Aniko, we brought you in. We are ready to hear it. Well, what does DopaMind mean, the name of your company here?
Well, DopaMind is, hi, by the way. It's a playful combination of dopamine, which I can explain what that means. And the concept of mind, the brain, because what we really do is teach kids and their caregivers the brain science behind technology so that they can go and make healthy choices. We don't judge, we don't preach, we don't say it's bad. You started the episode with kind of feeling guilty, right? Like, we don't want any of that for parents. So, do you want me to explain what dopamine is? Should we get into that?
Because I think that we all experience it, the hit of it, so often without maybe even realizing that's actually the chemical reaction that's going on.
Yeah, exactly. Well, before I do that, maybe I'm going to hit you with a quote that you may or may not heard, which is, we have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. This is from Edward O. Wilson, who is a sociobiologist. And what that really means is that technology has evolved faster than the human brain. So dopamine is an ancient survival mechanism. So when we learn or discover something new, so it has to do with novelty, we get rewarded with dopamine. So that's what makes us want to repeat these feel-good behaviors. Mm-hmm. So that's what's called the reward circuit in the brain. So try not to get too technical here. But before technology, Paleolithic people, so our ancestors, they got dopamine from basic things: eating, drinking water, socializing. These are things that help them survive. And think about it, like, it was a really hard time to live. We were hunting, we were gathering. There was predators everywhere. So it kind of kept us going as a species. So that's like the basic premise of it. And it's not a bad thing. It's just that technology in particular, there's other things too, are designed, they're engineered to give us lots of dopamine to keep us on our devices longer.
So, if we're talking about this being a thing from prehistoric times, are we genetically predisposed to seek out hits of dopamine, be it, killing a saber-toothed tiger and having a glass of water, or scrolling on my iPhone? Where we kind of come at this, I don't want to say at a disadvantage, but kind of in a space that genetics and evolution has left us very vulnerable to.
No, I don't think describing it as a disadvantage is necessarily wrong. the tech companies, they do exploit our human psychology to make money. I mean, there's no better way of saying that. So tapping into this ancient dopamine reward system is one of the ways they do that. So yeah, like we are naturally as humans going to be predisposed to look for those dopamine rewards. It's just the way it is.
So I think the last premise here to let people kind of better understand the interview is now, okay, we know what it is. We know how it developed. Now let's make the connection, right? Like how does dopamine and the screen that I'm looking at, how are those two things connected?
Yeah. Okay. So this might be a little bit of a long answer, but I'll try to keep it brief. But everything on our devices, so computers, phones, TVs, gaming systems, they're designed to give us lots of dopamine. So I mentioned that already, and that's what keeps us interested. So that's the novelty and on our screens longer. So why do they want to keep us on longer? They want to show us ads, or in the case of video games, to buy those in-app purchases. So, and our attention is, you guys may have heard the term attention economy, right? I mean, I think it's a pretty common buzzword now. Our attention is sold to advertisers as a commodity. Tristan Harris, who is one of the leaders in the digital wellness space, he says, if you're not paying for the product, you're the product. So that is just something to really keep in the back of our minds as we navigate tech. And if you kind of think about that, it actually makes navigating it a lot easier. If this is free, what does this piece of technology want from me right now? So, so how do they do this? Like I already mentioned this idea that they're using human psychology to keep us on. So they do use, and there's no better way to describe it, they're addictive features. I'm not saying you're going to get addicted, but the features are addictive.
We already are.
But sorry, you are.
I said we already are.
Yeah. So I'll just list a few. So like even the little red notification icon or the hearts, right? The like button, infinite scroll that keeps us scrolling longer. Suggested videos, like you've watched something, now YouTube or whatever the platform is going to give you more of the same. Push notifications, you put down your device, you get a text, pops up a notification, you pick it right back down. So these are all features that feed us dopamine. And I've heard it referred to as like a slot machine before. There's other metaphors. It's basically like every time you swipe or every time you go on, you don't quite know what you're going to get, right? It might be nothing. It might be something really great. So that is another tactic that kind of keeps us on. So, you know, everybody talks about social media, but we also like to talk a lot about video games because especially for the younger kids, it's a bigger thing. So they, especially the free to play ones, again, if you're not paying for the product, you're the product. They will have social media components, things like chat, things like publicly comparing yourself to others. They're going to have a lot of these same features built in. And then another big one we say is there's no clear stopping point. So I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember like when social media began.
We are.
Okay. It was very benign. If you remember the very beginning, I'm talking like maybe 2007, 2008. And this is when I first started working as a social media marketer. I know make myself sound 100 years old, but it is what it is. I've seen where we started and where we are now. If you remember, it was, first of all, it was just your friends. There was no news feed. There was no advertisers. There was no companies on it, right? And you would scroll through your friends' posts and you'd get to the end.
Yes,
and
there was an end.
Yes.
Remember
that?
Yep.
Yes, there was an end.
That was a natural stopping point where we say, oh, I've seen everything. I'm done. I'm going to put it down. Even things like back then it was paginated, meaning you clicked page 1, page 2, page 3. There was no infinite scroll where it kept going, going, going. So these are design decisions and things that have happened along the way. And I don't mean to sound like engineers are out there to destroy humanity. I think these are all features that were designed to remove what we call friction, right? To make things easier to use. But they are, and then also combined with the fact that it's optimized for engagement, they happen to keep people on longer than it's healthy, usually, right? So I think those are probably the main things. I mean, there's also texting, which also feeds dopamine. And I think it flies under the radar a lot for younger kids, especially when we talk about group chats and things like that. Those are giving us dopamine rewards. But basically, I mean, the way we like to think about it, I mean, you could look at content harm and things like that, but really what it's doing is it's causing our dopamine levels to be out of balance. And if I can just explain one more thing, kind of backing up to dopamine and how it works in the brain, it's what's called the pleasure pain balance. And this is from Dr. Anna Lemke's work. She wrote Dopamine Nation. I don't know if you're familiar with that book. It was one of the first ones. But she describes a metaphor for the pleasure pain balance in the brain, which is a teeter-totter. So we call it the feelings teeter-totter when we teach the young kids. So basically, when you're getting a lot of dopamine from your tech, your teeter-totter tips way over to like the pleasure side of the balance. But what goes up must go down. That's like one of the rules of the teeter-totter. So after you're done, you're going to tip all the way to the pain side, right? And so if you do nothing, it's not going to feel so good, but eventually it'll go back to level and you'll be good. But because we're hitting it so hard, we basically become desensitized, but we also become, our tolerance goes way up. So that's why people need to use it more and more to feel like any good at all. So it basically, the way I think about it is this addictive deck is harming our mental health because our dopamine levels are just out of whack all the time. We just want to be level. We want to kind of have a baseline.
So we've established sort of what dopamine is, how it works. You work in this day in, day out with parents. Is there anything in your work that parents would simply find shocking?
How much time do we have? I mean,
give me a couple. Give me a 30-second example.
No, I know. Okay. I mean, look, I know about this stuff because I've been working in it a long time, since 2007, basically. So I'm not really shocked by the way it works or any of that part of thing. But I'll give you, I would say, my two top things. One of them is porn. I know you guys have discussed this in length. I think you did a couple of recent episodes on it. This is a big one. And I'm not an uptight person, like in terms of sexuality or anything like that. But porn is addictive. It is extreme. It is definitely something that hopefully as parents, we agree that it's not something we want our young kids to be looking at, right? So you guys probably know these statistics because you've done other shows, but 73% of teens have been exposed to porn. Most have seen it by age 13. 80% of all internet porn is consumed on mobile devices. So it's on the smartphones. 41% have seen it during the school day, 44% on school-owned devices. So this is why we're like huge proponents of phone-free schools. One of the reasons. So that's a big one, is just how widespread this is among very, very young kids. And then the second one I would say is, and this is one I've been talking a lot about lately, especially with what's been in the news. I mean, like the first thing that pops into my head is, the Charlie Kirk shooting and how many kids like were fed that in their feeds, like very, very young kids. Like anecdotally, I have a 12-year-old. He has an Apple Watch, but that's it. It's not on social media. He said every other kid in his history class had seen it within 24 hours.
Wow.
And this is 12-year-olds.
Wow.
So what I would say about that is, and again, endless stories I've heard, but your kid's feed is not your feed. So your feed is probably fine. Maybe you have cooking things, maybe you have lifestyle things. I don't know.
Totally.
But the thing is, kids are seeing and sadly fed the worst of the worst content. So I'm talking about, it could be a lot of things, but eating disorder content, self-harm, racism, misogyny, the list goes on and on. I interviewed the founder of Center for Countering Digital Hate. This is what they do, is focus on this issue. So I'll just give you one example. They did a model recently. They opened new YouTube accounts for 13-year-olds. So they said 700 out of 1,000 times it fed them back eating disordered or self-harm content. And then they said if they change the username to something even more to show that they're more vulnerable, like weight loss Susie or whatever, that it would intensify it even more. So, and it goes on and on. There have been nonprofits, there's been reporters that have done these same kind of tests. And it's sad, but it is what is happening. When you open a Snapchat account as a 13-year-old, you're likely going to get fed a dick pic. Sorry. I mean, like, I just have to be really blunt about this. So, I know I said keep it brief. Like those are probably two top things. There's more that I think parents just really, really have their head in the sand about.
Let me bring you back to the dopamine for a second, because I think that it's a good point. I mean, listen, we hear it all the time, shots of dopamine, everyone's dopamine's out of whack. How does that manifest in the analog world for these kids? I mean, yes, they're being fed it, it's spiking, it's reducing, maybe it's leveling off. But in terms of like your child's non-screen behavior, what's the consequence of that for parents?
So you're saying if they're getting too much dopamine, what's the consequence of that after?
Correct.
So I think the biggest thing is it just makes it hard to get satisfaction out of like almost anything else. So I always say, like, if you've been hitting Roblox for 2 hours, it's going to be really hard to read a book after. If you've been scrolling TikTok for 20 minutes as a teenager, it's going to be really hard to sit through math class, right? So kids often are getting less satisfaction about things that they used to feel really good about. Sports, getting a good grade on a test, like basically other kind of daily activities that take more effort. Yes, I understand it takes a lot more effort to get a good grade on a test than to scroll TikTok for 20 minutes, but it is healthier, right? To get those things. So I think that is kind of the main thing I would say. But I would also say that we all feel it. We wake up in a dopamine deficit sometimes. There are natural ways we can elevate our dopamine. And I mean, it's a little bit of a cliche. It's the stuff that they tell us to do all the time, but it's true. Exercise, meditation, music, we talked about like completing math problem, organizing your closet. Like these are all things that give us dopamine, but they're natural. They're not giving us like an unnatural, really high level that our bodies just can't handle. Remember, we are still like hunter-gatherers, like in our brains. We're not evolved yet.
And
Maybe we will someday. I don't know.
I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off, but I think that the other part of that too is that we're also training children to have a short attention span. I was just reading an article recently, and they said the average attention span in the US is now 47 seconds, down from like 2.5 minutes 10 years ago. I mean, so first of all, I thought 2.5 was shocking. 47 is alarming. And when you look at, for that's cut by 75% in 10 years. So where does that leave us? Another 10. So as a parent, and we both have young parents, and we do have different approaches to screen time in our homes, what is the best way to have your child interact with technology?
Yeah. So, I have a lot of things to say on this too, but should we do younger? Let's do younger kids and older kids.
Sure.
So let's start with younger kids. This is probably the most important thing.
And who do you classify as younger, by the way? Is this like
I
8
would
and
say
under,
like through elementary school.
Okay.
So the littles through elementary. We are 100% in charge as parents. Like, I don't know why I have to say this, but I have to say it. And that's a good thing. That means we get to decide what they have access to, what media they see. There's going to be less odds of their own friends showing them things that happen more in the teen years. But very simply, I would just say less is more, and I would say later is better, right? So, a few tips there. I always talk about pacing the introduction of tech. So just like we introduced food to our babies, we did formula before we did solid foods, right? So same kind of idea. Like, let's not start with TikTok. Let's start with something that's slower, single camera, something like that for media, versus the what you described as, back to attention span. Short form videos are really gonna take that down right away, right? And then now we're conditioned to them, and it's really hard to go back. Less choices. So, think kind of how we grew up, right? Like less on demand, less open-ended, media that has a beginning, middle, and end. I'm not, in my family, we don't do iPads. If you do, that's great. But the one thing about the iPad, unless you have it pretty well locked down, it's very open-ended. There's always an app to download. Obviously, it's connected to the internet, things like that. Less choices are better. A lot of choice is stressful for the brain. Like, think about going to a restaurant and going through a 30-page menu versus a 1-page menu. I would say out of sight, out of mind is a big one. In our house, we keep our remotes put away. If you do have an iPad, like charge it somewhere where they can't see it. You're going to avoid that little dopamine spike that you get when you see something. And think about it, like, can you walk by your phone without checking it? Like, it's hard for adults too. And then there are ways, so you asked, like, I guess, what's the best way for a child to interact, I think was your question.
Yes.
There are like solutions starting to come out. I recently interviewed the CEO of Angel Q. I don't know if you guys have heard of that one, but it's a kid safe browser. So instead of like sending them to Google, right? Let's say you want them to research something they really like or watch videos or whatever, it all gets filtered through this app that you can then lock them into. So just definitely, like, again, less is more, pacing, right? Like, I always tell my kids, like, we're going to get to everything. If I give you everything now, like, what do you have to look forward to, right? So that's a big one. And then we can cover older kids too.
And before you go on, I think that one of the important things, and you kind of alluded to this, is not only are you in charge 100%, but give your kids an opportunity to respond to changes. Like, we had to do this in our house where, I don't know how we got into this, but like our kids suddenly decided they were going to watch TV before school in the morning. And it became very habitual. And frankly, it was like, okay, I know what you're doing while I'm getting ready. You're safe. You're not in the kitchen trying to make breakfast or burn the house down or, whatever. So it became kind of a thing. And we were like, wait a minute, we don't love your behavior because of your exposure to this first thing in the morning. So we said, hey guys, new rule, like, we don't eat breakfast on the couch watching TV anymore. We eat it in the kitchen. We sit at the counter, we blah, blah, blah. And they were so shockingly receptive to that change that we thought was good, because we have a 6 and 8 year old boy.
You're like nervous.
Right.
Like, oh, how do I approach this?
When given a chance to say, hey guys, this is the new rule, they're like, okay. And I think a lot of parents are so afraid of that conflict that they don't give their children a chance to prove that they can adapt to new rules.
I'm amazed that they acquiesced.
They did quickly. So what do you think for older kids? Maybe we're talking about middle school and up.
Yeah. So for older kids, it's tricky because I do parent eds all from like littles, preschool, all the way through high school. And I feel like by the time you get to middle and high school, there's a sense of like parents feeling like lost or hopeless, right? Because they've given it whatever it is. Usually it's the phone, and then they regret it. But I always say boundaries. They want them. They need them. They might not tell you in the moment. And of course, they're going to push back their adolescence. But I hear this time and time again. They will thank you someday. And often what I hear is, because again, we work with a lot of youth activists, them looking back and saying, I wish my parents had put in boundaries on my phone. I wish they'd put time limits. I wish. So let's start with that. Time limits. It's huge. American teens are spending 5 hours a day on social media, up to 9 if you add in other screen activities. So if all we do is let's say it's Apple, set our Apple screen time limits and say, okay, maybe I'm going to say yes to Instagram, but you get 15 minutes. Like, that's huge. That gets around a lot of the issues we already talked about. It's less dopamine. It's less ads they're going to see. It's less likely they'll go down a content rabbit hole, right? So that's a big one. Devices out of bedrooms is a huge one. This is where a lot of the issues happen when kids are alone. They're vulnerable, often overnight. That's a big one. And also sleep. It affects their sleep to have even just the presence of the device. I would say phone-free hangouts. Like, again, we can facilitate this. In my house, so my son's 12, he doesn't have a phone, but we have a phone box. It's, you could do different ones. We have like analog version where it's just like a little cupboard, basically. And they all go in there when his friends come over, and I take them.
And what's the response from parents? I'm so curious about this because I feel like we're right up against it myself. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to be the weird parent, but I fear I already am.
I don't care, but I will tell you, I will tell the parents. And every time I do, I'll say, look, because he had a sleepover for his 12th birthday. I said, here's the deal for the sleepover. I gave them all the details, and I said, we are going to take the devices at a certain time. I will keep them. So if you need to reach them, please text me. I'll keep my phone close by. 100% of them said, that's awesome. Good for you. Thank you. If you bring these conversations to other parents and you do it in like a non-judgmental way and make it about you, just be like, yeah, it's just like what I do. It's what we do in our house. I've never had a situation where a parent didn't say either good idea or thank you or yeah, of course. I actually had a couple parents said, I won't even send the device. So, and I say this all the time to parents, like we have to have these conversations just like we would talk about food, maybe. I'm coming over, I'm a vegetarian. Oh, great. No big deal. Like I'll accommodate that. Like we should be able to talk about our tech preferences the same way. Like it shouldn't be everyone's dirty secret. And it should be something that we can talk about and that it shouldn't be weird to talk about it. Right. So yeah, so I've never had a bad reaction. Of course, you have to say it in a way that doesn't sound judgmental.
Of
right?
course. No, of course.
Yeah.
And people, I mean, certainly people have plenty of great reasons to have their kids have phones. I am curious. You say that you really shouldn't use screen time as a reward. And I think especially families that are minimal screen time families, I'm imagining they're using it as a reward because they're like, hey, you never get this. But if you do da 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 da, then you'll get this. What's the thinking behind no screen time as a reward?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll put a couple caveats on it. So what we say is just be careful tying screen time to rewards and punishments. So, and the reason is it can create an inflated value of screen time in a child's life. So we always say tech is just like a part of our everyday lives. Like we almost can't avoid it. Right. So what we want to do is just kind of present it as something like we just do and not something that's so special and so coveted that if I'm not good, if I don't get a good grade, if I don't, whatever, I can't get it. Right. But I'll put a couple caveats on it. So what you described is probably one of my caveats, which is saying homework and chores need to be done before screen time. That's not a reward. That is just life. That's like us saying we have to take care of our work before we have recreation. I mean, that is just the way the world works. So that I think is a big exception. And on the flip side, if you take a break from like a device or a game because it's the game is problematic or the app is problematic or the device is problematic, that's not a punishment because the consequence is logical. So like let's say like saying, okay, I'm going to take your screen time because you hit your sister. Okay. Like that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. But let's say your kid had like a giant meltdown, like you talked about your kids like not behaving well after they watch TV in the morning, right? So a logical consequence is like, hey, I've noticed this is not working for you. We're going to take a break or we're going to change it up, right? Like that's not a punishment either. So, and then like the last thing I'll say about this, I'm huge on device agreements. So like on the DopaMind site, we actually have a free device agreement that parents can use for like a first device. It can be an Apple Watch. It can be, anything that's like a first device. If you set up the rules in the beginning and you set up the consequences in the beginning, and it could be they violate any part of the rule, whatever it is, then it would make sense, right? To take a break from that device because you've already predetermined it. So just, I guess, instead of like, don't do it, it's be careful how you do it because you just don't want it to be so special and so coveted that your kid kind of gets more obsessed with it than they need to.
Excellent. So we've got to cut it off there. But again, we do want to remind folks, where's the best place to find you? Maybe on, ironically, social media.
That's how I found her.
I know. Our website's dopamindkids.org. But yes, we're on all socials at DopaMind Kids. And we just have really good tips for parents, tips, tricks, all types of content that'll help digital parenting.
Well, we certainly appreciate you taking so much time for us today. I have a feeling it's not going to be the last time we chat with you. We'll see you soon, though. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Aniko.
Thank you so much.
It's funny. We've been talking about this a lot in our house because there are some other things that we do enjoy that involve screens with the kids. And I was glad to see that a lot of this research is really based around individual one-on-one screen to child and does not count a lot of time with shared experiences like family movie night. Like we're all like
sure.
That kind of screen seems to be not immune to any of this stuff.
Remember
but
back in the 80s when they were worried about those screens? And now it's like now it's like, oh, that's nothing.
That screen's the least of your
nothing
problems.
compared to this. Or maybe playing a game together or connecting with maybe there's some follow up there, but
we do that.
Sense.
I mean, we love a good board game. We play cards with the kids a lot. We do projects and stuff. But it is, they also love being on their little Nintendo Switch, but there's a timer and that timer goes off and the time is done and that's it.
Even mid-game?
Even mid-game, you got to save your game. You got
I don't even know how that works.
When the timer goes off,
so
you have like 30 seconds to save your game, or we're shutting it off.
Okay, so then they can go back to their place.
Yes.
So that's not so bad.
For sure. All right.
They're fine.
We hope you come back to our place every Tuesday morning, 7 o'clock when a new episode drops. Be sure and click like and subscribe so that we can pump up those numbers to keep doing what we love doing. And if you do nothing else today, make sure you go find yourself a friend you don't need to clean the house for. We'll see you next time.